Recent reports have shed a light on how exactly insane the post-production work on Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse was, especially the final 6 weeks before release. Ever since the release of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, we've learned plenty of details in regards to the insane amount of post-production work that was done on the film, including scrapping an entire character, reworking the third act, reworking parts of Act 1 and 2, going back to the drawing board and trying to put things together, having to make sure that the film ends on the right note, which they didn't have done in time, and all sorts of things, and still needing to put out the third film, which is also running into a lot of issues apparently. Well, what we recently found out is that significant changes were made only 6 weeks prior to the film's theatrical release in June of 2023. And what we find out is that majority of the third act was reworked literally on the fly on those 6 weeks. They realized that the third act, the way they had it, did not work, and essentially tried to make sure that whatever we got looked complete. And this included almost everyone involved in post-production working a lot of overtime and on the fly needing to be, well, there to be able to change a lot of elements. By all accounts, the third act completely removed the one spider, the giant mech spider thing we saw, and that had to be removed from the entire duration of the rest of the film because the character appeared in other scenes, and allegedly also had something to do in the second act. More so in the third act, according to reports, the ending of the film was completely different, and this also showed in the way that they were changing dialogue in post-production, because some of the dialogue was still left over that didn't necessarily, I guess, lead to what's going to be going on in the third film, and even make sense in some elements of the second film. Now, of course, we saw that there was different releases of the film around the world, from changed dialogue to how they handled the scene in terms of music and color to what they're trying to say with it. Like, there was just a lot of inconsistencies. And then on the physical release, digital, they're changing the actual dialogue from what it was even on the other releases. Like, it's just kind of baffling, but it does paint a picture of they rushed this thing out the door and it was undercooked. But the fact that it managed to stick a landing that makes sense is quite impressive. But this also brings up the bigger question of Sony overworking their employees, which we heard was an issue during the entire development of this film. So we'll see if anything comes of this or not, because they already chose to ignore it once when it showed up right after the release of the film during interviews.